Right. So today we are going to look into block 5, that is contemporary Indian English fiction. So all the while we were doing the modernism and the fiction of the modernist era of the British, of the American, right? Now we are going to take up contemporary Indian English fiction, that is English of Indian, right? The fiction of English in Indian language, right? So first and foremost, we're going to look into the introduction to Indian language, Indian English fiction, sorry. Then we also have the novels God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy and The Shadow Lines of Amitav Ghosh. Right. So let me just share the screen and then I'll just move ahead. Right. I hope the screen is visible. Slides are visible, right?
Yeah, ma'am.
Right. Fine. So when did this Indian English, I mean, writing in English in India begin? So to explain this, say around 1793, Sheikh Dean Mohammed wrote perhaps the first book in English called The Travels of Dean Mohammed. So, however, most early Indian writing in English was non-fictional works such as biographies and political essays. Then again in 1864, Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay's Rajmohan's wife. Then in 1883, Shoshi Chandra's The Young Jamindar and Shankar. I mean, these were some of the writers who have written it in English. So hence they are Indians and written in English. Hence it is called Indian English fiction. I mean, but majority of them haven't written much on fiction. Especially the travels of Muhammad, it was like a biography only. I mean, about his experiences, he has written it. So they are basically non-fiction kind of things, right? So Indian English fiction is believed to have emerged during the early years of the 20th century. Most of the early practitioners of Indian English literature were mostly British, and this is not quite surprising since India was perhaps not in a condition under British domination to produce excellence in native English language and literature. Although there were many Indian exponents who arrived sometime later, but the history of Indian English literature belongs solely to the elite British section of the society. The works of George Orwell, Rudyard Kipling, and Jim Corbett had offered the preliminary push towards growth of Indian English writings that was later developed by other British writers. So the contribution made by Rabindranath Tagore, Michael Madhusudan Dutt, Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, R.C. Dutt, Raja Rao, Jawaharlal Nehru, and Mahatma Gandhi, among others, consolidated the historical maturity of English literature in India. Now, they represented the natives and served as the pre independent spokesperson in delineating the vision of life then. Now, novel, which is a vital medium for the expression of the spirit of the age, can never grow and develop in isolation as it is related with life and society. The Indian English novel of this period reveals the spirit of the age in an authentic manner. Now, it has become a great literary force, a powerful medium for creating social and national awareness. Novel is a long narrative in prose with plot, subplot, characterization, theme, etc. Now, Bankim Chandra Chatterjee's Ram Mohan's Wife is the first Indian novel in English. It is noticeable that when modernism was the trend in the world literature, India produced its first novel in English. Then again, Anandamath was the second novel. It had Vande Mataram, the Indian patriotic song. Then came Krishna Pant's Bay of Bengal, Kandan, Kandan, Filler, Toru Dutt's Bianca, Jogendra Singh's Noor Jahan, and Madhusudan Dutt's Kamarupa and Kamalata. Then Toru Dutt was the majority, I mean, they are major literary figures of the times. So till 1930, it was an imitation of British literature and also had historical romances. Now, let us quickly look into the pre independence Indian English fiction and what was it? Contributions. Okay, the contributions which were in particular made by the pioneers of Bengali literature, namely Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, R.C. Dutt, and Rabindranath Tagore. Then the popular novels by Bankim Chandra Chatterjee include Kopal Kunda, Durgesh Nandini, Krishan Kanta's Will, The Two Rings, and Rajmohan's Wife. Most of his novels are based on themes of social life, which he delineated with realism. His historical novels, representing ideas of patriotism and revolution, provided an impetus to many other Indian English novelists. R.C. Dutt wrote 6 novels in Bengali. 4 were historical novels called Bhanga Bijeta, that is Conqueror of Bengal, then Madhavi Kanan, Bracelet of Flowers, Rajput and Rajput Jiban Sandhya, that means Evening of Rajput Life, and Maharashtra Prabhat, that means Dawn of Maharashtra. So the first 2 novels deal with the conquest of Bengal by the Emperor Akbar. Then Dutt also wrote 2 social novels, Samaj and Sansar. The first one is based on the theme of widow remarriage, and the second one deals with the issue of intercaste marriage. So most of his novels introduce the theme of social reformation. Then Rabindranath Tagore is a major presence when one thinks of Bengal and its culture, a paramount figure in Indian English literature. A collection of poems, Geetanjali. I think you all are familiar because these are very much there prescribed for the English textbook in the lower classes, where it's called as Geetanjali. It's like song offerings, okay, secured for him the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913. He excelled in various genres of art and culture, became renowned as a poet, dramatist, novelist, composer, actor, singer, editor of the Bengali Literary Journal, Sadhana. So he wrote 8 novels and 4 novellas, among them Chaturanga, Sheshar Kobita, Chare Adjay, and Nauka Dubi are some of his famous novels that were rendered into English, um, uh, were rendered into the English thing. And there are other novels also which were brought out into this language, English, that is the Wreck, Gora, and Home and the World. So many of his works are the inspiration for filmmakers. Some 100 films have been made, out of which more than half in Bengali and are based on Tagore's works, making him one of the most adapted writers of all time. Right. Uh, okay, this was something to do that was pre-independence Indian English novelists. Now, the pre-independence Indian English fiction has been shaped by the contribution made by the pioneers of Bengali literature, namely Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, R.C. Dutt, and Rabindranath Tagore. Now, coming to the post-independence period. Now, even before you look into the post-independence period, we also have the period between pre and post. That was kind of a period where it was a period of freedom struggle and how Gandhiji has influenced it. Now, they were responsible for the freedom struggle and the influence of Gandhi were all responsible for the growth and development of novel in its early stage. Now, for example, S. Jogendra Singh's Nasreen, The Love of Kusuma by Balakrishna, Sorabji Cornelia's Love and Life Behind the Parda, and Sun Babies, and Between the Twilight are some of the famous novels based on the theme of national awakening and political consciousness. Now, this is the period there was a kind of a struggle, right, for struggle for liberating India from the clutches of British. So this is how the theme was in most of the writings. So the various momentous events of the Gandhian era, like the boycott of the Simon Commission, the boycott of foreign goods, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, civil disobedient movement, Dandi March, Quit India movement, and many others, forms of Gandhian movement are represented in many of the novels written during this period of freedom struggle. Many writers of this period were influenced by the ideals of Mahatma Gandhi, who voiced against the injustice done towards the underprivileged, the marginalized, and the suppressed. Now, according to Amamat Prasad, the works dealing with the theme of either Gandhi or the contemporary freedom struggle are Mulk Raj Anand's Untouchable, Raja Rao's Kantapura, then Venkataramani's Khandan the Patriot, then D.F. Karaka's We Never Die, then Amir Ali's Conflict. So these were some of the writings during that period. And out of which Mulk Raj Anand was one of the most prolific writers of the period, who's best known as a social realist and a humanist. Now, his vision of a humanist and a reformist is seen in his novel named Untouchable. Now, this actually gave him immense popularity. His other humanistic novels, Coolie, Two Leaves and a Bud, The Village, Across the Black Waters, The Sword and the Sickle, The Big Heart in 1945. So, Mulk Raj Anand has also written 7 collections of short stories. Right. Now, again, R.K. Narayan is also one of the pioneers of regional novel in India. He's based many of his novels on the fictional place called Malgudi, which he created in his imagination. Some of his autobiographical works include Swami and Friends. Then the novels placed on the locale of Malgudi are The Dark Room, Mr. Sampath, The Financial Expert, The Guide, Waiting for the Mahatma, The Vendor of Sweets, The Painter of Signs, A Tiger for Malgudi, and so on. Right. Now, if you actually look into R.K. Narayan's style, his humor is woven into the texture of his prose. It never erupts into a detachable epigram or joke. He did his best to inject the spirit and tempo of Tamilian idiom into English speech in a natural and unaffected manner. In spite of the raciness and simplicity, Narayan's style is rich in evocativeness and suggestiveness. Right. Coming to the post-independent. So it was as of now, till now, we've been looking into the period between pre and post-independent. That is the period of struggle in between these two periods. Now, coming to the post-independent writers, they include Babani Bhattacharya, Khushwant Singh, Manohar Malgaonkar, Chaman Nahal, Amitav Ghosh, Salman Rushdie, and many other popular writers of the post-independence era dealt with the idea of brutality and inhumanity seen during the partition of India. And Bhabani Bhattacharya, who contributed many novels, most of them were driven with a social purpose. His works include So Many Hungers, Music for Mohini, He Who Rides a Tiger, a goddess named Gold, Music for Mohini, right. Now, he has also written a number of short stories for psychological interest. He was also the winner of Sahitya Academy Award in 1967 for his novel Shadow from Ladakh. Now, he could easily grasp the social scenario of his times and documented them in his novel. And another renowned writer I've already mentioned, Khushwant Singh. He is the recipient of Padma Bhushan in 1974. He was the editor of Yojana, the Illustrated Weekly of India, the National Herald, then New Delhi, and the Hindustan Times. He has written four novels: Train to Pakistan, I Shall Not Hear the Nightingale, and Delhi, and The Company of Women. And he also published two collections of short stories called The Mark of Vishnu and A Bribe for the Sahib. Now, he received Grove Press Award for Train to Pakistan. In this novel, he gives a horrifying picture of the brutality and inhumanity seen during the partition of India. The novel was set in a fictional place called Mauna Majriya, located in the India-Pakistan border. Now, Manohar Malgaonkar has been a notable writer too. He worked in the Indian Army during the Second World War and was eventually appointed to the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. So, his experiences of army life were recorded in his debut novel, Distant Drums, and his other books include Combat of Shadows, The Princess, Bend in the Ganges, Spy in Amber, The Devil's Wind, and so on. Now, his novels have a wide range of thematic variety. Then we also have Chaman Nahal. He's again another prominent, I mean, these are all post war. I mean, they are like post independent writers. So post-independence, this is how in the post-independent era, these were the prominent writers. Chaman Nahal, who has written books like My True Faces, Azadi, Into Another Dawn, and so on. So, in fact, Into Another Dawn highlights the encounter between East and West. Now, during the 1970s, a new class of elite Indian English authors emerged and became globally acclaimed. One of such writers is Salman Rushdie, a novelist of global fame and also one of the most controversial writers in Indian English fiction. He is famous for creating historical fantasy, combining both magic and realism. Most of his works deal with history and politics, and to maintain here, one can talk about Grimives, which he exposes the politics of Western powers. And again, his Midnight Children, it's an extravagant representations of the mingling of an individual's life and a nation's history. He received the Booker of Bookers for this novel, which deals with the important political happenings of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Now, another eminent writer of this period is Amitav Ghosh. Of course, we have his novel in this block today. We'll be doing it, The Shadow Lines. That's what we're going to do it today. So Amitav Ghosh has been quite successful in contributing a lot towards Indian English literature. He worked as a print journalist in the Indian Express during the emergency, and and had a first-hand experience of socio-political conditions of the contemporary times. His first work is titled The Circle of Reason, where he depicts an individual who, being suspected as a terrorist, flees from unknown village in Calcutta to Bombay and further journeys around the Persian Gulf to North Africa. So The Shadow Lines, published in 1986, deals with a family that lives in Kolkata and Dhaka, and also unfolds their connection with a British family that lives in London. The novel procured him Sahitya Academy Award. His third novel, In an Antique Land, chronicles an anthropological and historical survey colored with ample imagination. Okay, the next moving on to the women writers, women novelists of this post-independence period. So some of the early women novelists include Raj Lakshmi Devi, Cornelia Sarabji, Iqbal Unnisa Hussain, and many others. So the later novelists who gained immense popularity are namely Kamala Markandeya, Ruth P. Jabhala, and Nayantara Sehgal, Anita Desai, Shashi Deshpande, Arundhati Roy, Shobha Day, and some others. Okay, Arundhati Roy, that is what we have prescribed in this blog today. Right. So now these women novelists of Indian English literature have marked a distinctive form of writing, which is especially shaped by their feminine sensibility. The early women novelists include, as I've already explained, and they actually dealt with social and political concerns. Then now, Ruth Jabwala is a unique writer of Indian English novels. She brings to light the follies and foibles of her characters in the most humorous way. And she has written To Whom She Will, The Nature of Passion, A Swan in India, The Householder. Another one is Get Ready for Battle, and so on. There are quite a good number of novels written by Ruth P. And again, Nayantara Sehgal. She mostly focuses her attention towards the political situation and its influence upon human lives. So here she has written A Time to Be Happy. And she tries to highlight the degeneration of human values and the rampant corruption of political upheaval in her novel. She's also the author of Time of Mourning and Storm in Chandigarh, The Day in Shadow, and so on. Then Anita Desai, most of the time in her novels, she tries to probe into the psychological lives of her characters, trauma of the past, mental anguish, struggle with one's own self, or some of the aspects she is concerned with. Right. Then again, Shashi Deshpande uh, is most celebrated women novelist. Her novel, The Dark Holds No Terror, which depicts the struggle of a woman named Sarita, where she tries to break the strictures of society and rebels against familiar authority. Then, of course, Arundhati Roy, which we'll be doing it today. Then, so a quick recap about how the intro or the of the Indian English fiction. So the origin and development of Indian writing in English took place during the consolidation of British rule in India. Now, here we also have some of the contemporary novelists. That is, the novelists such as Pankaj Mishra, Chetan Bhagat, Jhumpa Lahiri. These are all the contemporary novelists. So, Dominic Lepier, William Dalrymple, they have received international acclaim in present times. The evolution of disciplines in critical literary studies, such as feminist, diasporic, postmodern, post-colonial, Dalit literature have given a new outlook and perspective of studying Indian English fiction writing. Right. So, various opinions are found regarding the first text that was written in Indian English, and many critics hold the view that history of Indian English writing could be traced back to least the early 19th century. One most important source that fostered the beginnings of Indian writing in English is the educational reforms by British government. And another is the effort of the missionaries and the response of the upper class Indians who accepted English literature and language in India with great enthusiasm. The history of Indian literature in English is generally believed to be 1.5 centuries old. So, The Travels of Dean Mohammed is regarded as the first book to be written in English by the Indian in 1793. The novel as a genre of literature was almost absent in India until 1900. Right. So now let us move on to Arundhati Roy, the god of small things. So before we begin this, let us quickly look into her biography of Arundhati Roy. So the novel which we are going to do is The God of Small Things. The year of publication is 1997, and it's basically a novel. The genre is fiction. So the God of Small Things is narrated from the third person omniscient point of view. So it is told by someone who sets the action and knows the characters' secrets without being part of the story. Let me just talk about Arundhati Roy. She was a year old. She was a year old when her parents divorced. They split, they separated. So she had this feeling of insecurity because of the broken marriage on the edge of the community. At age 10, went to school. When I think back on all the things I have done, I think from a very early age, I was determined to negotiate with the world on my own. There were no parents, no uncles, no aunts. I was completely responsible for myself. And she's well known for her novel, The God of Small Things, which won the Man Booker Prize for Fiction in 1997 and became the best selling book by a non expatriate Indian author. Early in her career, so in her career, Roy worked for television and movies. She wrote the screenplays for In Which Annie Gives It uh, those ones. In 1989, a movie based on her experiences as a student of architecture, in which she also appeared as a performer. And Electric Moon, Roy won the National Film Award for Best Screenplay in 1988, for In Which Annie Gives It those ones. So in fact, she was born in 1961 in the southeastern state of Kerala in India. Roy is the first Indian woman writer to win Britain's most prestigious literary award, and this public acclaim assured her status as a new novelist of striking ability, especially at the level of her innovative style. So, not long after the astonishing achievement of her first book, Roy was dubbed the literary queen by Barbara Wickens in Maclean's. So she, as an activist, she's agitating mostly against dam constructions and the nuclear war. She's also against globalization, corporatization, or the empire. Now, she actually, it is conceivable that she fights for protecting those small and defenseless things, which are at least as necessary as the big ones. That is also reflected in the God of Small Things. So, major works of Arundhati Roy, The God of Small Things, Ministry of Utmost Happiness, those are all novels. That is, those are the fiction kind of books, whereas non-fiction, The End of Imagination, The Cost of Living, The Greater Common Good, The Algebra of Infinite Justice, Power Politics, War Talk, An Ordinary Person's Guide to Empire, Public Power in the Age of Empire, and quite a good number of writings of hers. Right. So coming to The God of Small Things. So this is basically, it's a heart-rending story about 7 years old Esther and Rahel, two egg twins. Esther and Rahel, along with their mother, live in their maternal grandparents' house in Kerala following Amu's divorce. Amu works in the family pickle factory, in spite of which she and her kids are denied any rights. So this is basically deals with the complicated relationships between members of the family in Ayman, India. Each family member has different factors weighing on their relationships, like social obligation, familial duty, and personal dislike. So baby Kochama, one of the book's most negative characters, allows her personal grudges and preoccupation with society's approval to lead her to betray her own family outside of the apes. Velia Papan also chooses his duty. So the members of the IP, IP family deal with a variety of social and political influences that cause much internal and external struggle in the novel. In the larger society of Kerala, Marxist ideas have taken root and begin to upset the class system of landlords and laborers. This directly affects Paradise Pickles and the characters of Veluta, Chakwa, and Comrade Pillai. Uh, they can see the effect of that, right? So I want you to just go through this God of Small Things, where it's given as introduction to the God of Small Things in 14.1, page 198. I think if you read it, you'll surely understand. Um, so she is Arundhati Roy, basically is one of the few Indian writers who are actively interested in contemporary socio-political issues, as is amply evidenced in a number of articles. And another thing, it is quite evident in this novel is women's place in patriarchal society. So, family is a dominant ideology through which a particular set of household and gender relationships are universalized and naturalized, and through which unequal power relations are observed and legitimized. So, in this novel, every woman suffers in her own way. Right at the center is the doleful tale of Ammo, mother of Rahel and Esther, whose suffering start in her own house and slowly contributes to her death. And the other two victims of oppression, they are Mamachi and baby Kochama, where they fit into the oppressive family system and blatantly victimizes Ammu. They become her active oppressors. Right. So it is like, when you read it, you will definitely come to conclusion that it becomes quite evident that women's place in a male chauvinistic society is never equal to that of men. Women's suffering start with their family and continue throughout. Just like Mamachi, Ammu, and Rahal and baby Kochama suffer differently due to the cruel treatment of the society and they live in, and social structures are so formed as to sanctify women's victimization. So Arundhati Roy's depiction of the miserable lives of women in this novel critiques in unmistakable terms the perpetuation of these exploitative forces. Right. Now, next we move on to the shadow lines. Amitav Ghosh, the shadow lines, right. Amitav Ghosh, born in Calcutta in 1956, a diplomat father, incorporated travel in his formative years, primarily lived in India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Iran, schooling from the Doon School, completed graduate studies from the University of Delhi, PhD in social anthropology from Oxford University. So he chooses this title to suggest that the borders which separate people are mere shadow and nothing more than artificial lines created by politicians. Now, then Robbie says, and then I think to myself, why don't they draw thousands of little lines through the whole subcontinent and give every little place a new name? What would it change? It's a mirage. The whole thing is a mirage. How can anyone divide a memory? Right. Now, it's a novel by Indian author Amitav Ghosh. Upon its publication in 1988, the book got praises and it was praised for its ingenious structure and challenging style. Most novels tell a story. The Shadow Lines does not pretend to have a concrete plot. Rather, it's a series of stream of consciousness, memories delivered to the reader by an unnamed character known as the narrator. Jumping back and forth between 1939 and the mid 1970s, the narrator reminisces about various family members and friends and how their lives intersected with a series of fatal riots in Calcutta and Pakistan in 1963 and 1964. So this is basically a story about connection and identity told through the lives of two Indian families, one based in Calcutta and the other in London. So the novel explores the theme of borders, both physical and psychological, and how they can be used to define the limit of the lives. So the novel deals with the concerns of the period and the search for identity, need for independence, difficult relationship with colonial culture, magnificently interweaves facts, fiction, and reminiscence. It's a continuous narrative which replicates the patterns of violence not only for 1964 but also for the 21st century. And the important theme of the novel, The Shadow Lines, is the concept of nationalism and its gaining ground in today's world. The author has held the extreme form of nationalism responsible for many a problem these days. Love of the country, passion inspired nationalism, and intoxication of patriotism cannot but lead to jingoism. Thus, nationalism, which had and which has great uses, can become the greatest obstacle to world unity and world peace. This tribal instinct has been magnified beyond all measures, resulting in political and economic megalomania. And the novel, in its enthusiasm to prove the point, has gone a little too far to proclaim that nationalism is a defunct force. Now, he deals with the epic themes of travel. His novels relates history, political struggle, communal violence, love, loss of values, etc. He deliberately crosses the boundary between anthropology and artistic work. So his narratives are categorically transnational in sweep. Now they move restlessly across countries, continents, and even oceans. Narratives always reflect the wisdom of an Oxford scholar. His views and opinions are meticulously researched, and learned in every book, an epic scale of scholarship is directly discernible. Now, these are some of the characters we come across in his play. The shadow lines, Tridib, protagonist, a middle class boy who grows up in a middle class family. He's the narrator's uncle. Then Tama, the narrator's grandmother, and a headmistress of a girls' school in Calcutta. Then Ila is the narrator's cousin who lives in Stockwell, London. May is the family's daughter, Price family's daughter. She's in love with Tridib. Nick, he's the Price family's son. He marries Ila during the course of the novel. Maya Devi, she's the narrator's grandmother's younger sister and Tridib's mother. So this is basically, it's a complex and a multi-layered novel that explores the themes of connection, identity, and border. So his writing is beautiful and evocative, and the novel is a moving exploration of the human experience. So, The Shadow Lines by Amitav Ghosh is a novel that tells the story of two families in India and Bangladesh and how their lives are intertwined. The novel spans several decades and covers a lot of ground, both geographically and emotionally. The Shadow Lines is a powerful and moving book which explores the themes of love, loss, identity, and memory. And his writing is beautiful, and the book is full of insights into the human condition, and it is a book that I would, definitely recommend to anyone who is looking for a moving and thought-provoking read. So I want you all to read this Amitav Ghosh, The Shadow Lines, the plot and the summary basically, and also the Arundhati Roy's God of Small Things. Then you will definitely get to know how the contemporary writers as well as the post-independent independence era writers have brought in their themes, their structure, their analysis. You'll be able to figure it out clearly once you read them. Right. So with this, we finished the fifth block too, and today being the last class, so I would wish you all the best. I want you all to go through all, yeah, go through all these blocks on your own. I also would want you to read the questions given at the back of the lesson. Each and every lesson has some questions. I want you to read them thoroughly. Then you will definitely get a hang of it. Then also, I want to take up every block's writers. There are at least a couple of writers in each and every block. So basically, out of 5 blocks, you have 5 pairs of writers. I mean, in 2 writers in per block is given along with their novels. So I want you to read the biography and at the same time the plot and the summary, and then you can compare it with the era of the fiction which kind of reflects the society of that era. So that is the reason why they have given as a supplementary thing for whatever you've been doing in that particular block. So if it is the first block where we talk about 18th century and that relevant novel and the writers they have given. So I want you to read this at the same time, read the novel and the writer's biography. So you will be able to connect these 3 things together if you read them at a time, right? So with this, we end the session, and this is my final, final class of this week. I mean, the 6th semester English fiction. So with this, we finished all the 5 blocks, right? So any doubts? Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome,
Thank you.
welcome. Yeah, welcome, ma. Welcome.
Ma'am, these classes are in YouTube, ma'am, you found?
Yes, yes, they are relayed on the live. This thing is there, as well as YouTube recordings also are there. So if anyone you seem to have missed these my live sessions, can watch the YouTube videos also. Maybe they will share the links, I think. So you can find out from the university authorities. Okay.
Okay, madam. Are you
Yeah.
share the link to me?
Yeah, definitely. I think you can ask university people, they will definitely share the link. The links are YouTube videos are meant for the students only to watch them, right?
I
All my
have no.
videos, all the 5 blocks videos, sorry, yes, 5 blocks from Tuesday onwards have been taking. All the videos are on YouTube. But only thing is you need to, contact the university person so that they will share the link with you, right?
I have no
And that
number
is
of them.
no, no, not the number. Like, how do you get messages about these classes? Same way you have to ask them about this.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes, Nikhil?
Actually, in my
Ha,
college,
ha,
just
ha,
send a how to when the conductor online class
ha,
that
ha,
only conductor,
ha, ha.
not links the
Link is
lecture.
not there. Okay, you just try to be online. I will put those links in the chat box. You can take them. Okay, Nikhil?
Okay,
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 just
ma'am.
hold on, hold on, hold on.
Okay, ma'am.
Are you there, Nikhil? Are you there?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah, yeah. Please, please. Okay, whatever links I have, I will share it with you right away.